Has poured in from across the globe and here at home. CBS 2's Andrea Grymes has that part of the story.
Praise from Pope Francis today on President Obama's historic announcement. The U.S. will begin to normalize relations with communist Cuba for the first time in more than 50 years.
Tutti siamo contenti perché abbiamo visto.
Today we are all happy, he says, because we have seen two countries which had moved away from each other for many years take a step closer yesterday. The pontiff played a big role in this big development. The White House says he issued a personal appeal to President Obama and to Cuba's President Raul Castro. Colin Powell, former Secretary of State under President George W. Bush, supports Obama's new course.
I think it's time now to turn that page of history.
Powell admits at the State Department he did help strengthen sanctions against Cuba. But he said on CBS this morning having diplomatic relations now can help produce positive change in a terrible regime.
They're not going to get off the sanctions list anytime soon. Congress isn't going to do that. But it's good to have an ambassador there who could tell the Cubans this is what comes if you start to respond in a positive way.
President Obama's new approach includes reopening embassies, lifting some travel restrictions for family and government visits, but not tourists yet, and allowing Americans to return with Cuban goods, including a limited amount of their famous cigars.
It means the doors are about to open in a big way, but let's not get too excited because, as you said, the Trading with the Enemies Act is still on the books. It doesn't prohibit us from going to Cuba, but it prohibits us from spending U.S. dollars there. We still have the sanctions in place. There are no scheduled airline flights there.
But not everyone believes normalizing relations with Cuba is a good thing. Congress members on both sides of the aisle have blasted the decision.
It's a fallacy to believe that Cuba will reform because an American president opens his hands and the Castro brothers will suddenly unclench their fists.
What these changes are going to do is they will tighten this regime's grip on power for decades to come. And it will significantly set back the hopes of freedom and democracy for the Cuban people.
Well, Cuba released U.S. aid worker Alan Gross and other Americans detained in Cuba. The U.S. released 3 members of a spy network known as the Cuban Five. New Jersey Senator Robert Menendez, who you just heard from, says there is no equivalence between an international aid worker and convicted spies, one of whom was also convicted of conspiracy to murder for his role in the killing of several American citizens. Mary.